All right. Our guest today is a former professional soccer player, a current professional soccer pundit. You will know him as the former Austin FC TV analyst, and more recently may have seen his appearances on CBS Golazo Network as well as several other places. It's Mike Lahoud. Michael Lahoud. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, I just asked him right before we started which he preferred, and he said all of his loved ones call him Michael, and then I called him Mike on air. So apologies, but thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. This has been a long time coming. Been a big admirer of the Moon Tower pod. You can add the government to that list. Whatever the government calls me, I go by that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talked a little bit about the stuff that we've known you from in the past and the stuff you're doing now. Now that you're not doing the Austin FC stuff full time, what all are you working on these days?
Man, yeah, you might as well call me the man with 400 jobs, because that's what I feel like I have this year. I still work with Austin FC just off the top, do a weekly studio show called Verde Lights with Adrian Healey, the voice of Verde, the legend himself. And we also do Matchday -1, which I think people watching or people listening in the pod will have heard of. We'll do Twitter Spaces as well. So still continuing in the Austin FC form. And outside of Austin FC, I've done a bunch with CBS Sports. They're doing a lot of big things. You've seen them in the Champions League with Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher, Micah Richards. This is the next best show coming in. No, I'm kidding. Those guys are world class. But I think I'd like to say we're the next best thing with the Golazo Network. I've recently done some studio appearances with them. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I've been going up each week, once a month, and been doing stuff on the show called Morning Footy. You might see a familiar name in Susanna Collins, Charlie Davies, Nico Cantar, Alexis Guerreros, Shani Chu, and kind of a host of rotating people. And then last but not least, did some experiences with Box to Box, which is more for the soccer lovers, where you get into the tactics, you get into kind of the purity of the game.
Yeah, I got into the whole Golazo Network thing a little bit late, but I started digging into it a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, man, this is cool. Like, this is what like I've been wanting soccer coverage in America to be for a long time. And you mentioned all of these names involved with it, people who are really good at their job, really fun to watch on TV. And I am always astonished how Alexis Guerreros got involved, like included in this group. I got to know him and his Cooligans co-host Christian Polanco a few years back when I was going to New York quite a bit. And like, I just feel like, tell me if you think this is right. I always feel like he's like one sentence away from getting fired and not getting asked to come back.
Oh, man. Alexis, I'll just say this. Alexis is unapologetically Alexis, and Alexis is unapologetically Brooklyn. In his words, I'm as Brooklyn as it gets. He's like the mayor of Brooklyn, Brooklyn proud. And the one thing I'll say about Alexis, don't let the comedian tag fool you. The guy knows a lot about the game, and especially the women's game. There were a couple times where he would school me on certain things just to give me a little bit of, stick, just to see if I knew my stuff. But he is the NWSL guru. Obviously knows his NYCFC just from his time with the Cooligans, but he's going to be one of the game changers in the industry. You just watch.
All right. Well, the plan for today's segment with you is going to be driven by our Patreon members. They sent in some questions, some mostly just about the team in general, some specifically for our guest, Michael Lahoud. But let's get started with this first one, Jeremiah.
Yeah. So this is from Robert Miller. It says, every time we lose, I see a sizable online contingent yell "Wolf out." Do you think this is reflective of the overall fan base?
Let's start with that. Let's start with that one.
Let's start with that one. Do you think this is reflective of the fan base, or are we all just too online and don't have perspective?
I think this is more reflective of how much we all love and care. And when Austin FC lose, it ruins our weekends. I know it ruins my weekends, and that's when you know you love a team. So you know you're a fan. It's hard to stay wolf out given the recent Major League Soccer performances. And I am always one to not make emotional decisions. I'm sure I've made a ton throughout my life. My wife will be the first one to tell me and call me out on it when I do. But I always think that it's kind of the voice of the minority when you hear wolf out, because those same people, when it's going well, when you find yourself in fifth place, those are the people that kind of sometimes waffle, and we're all guilty of it. I do it with different managers that I've seen and played under and, come across. But I think it's a bit premature to have said the wolf out. When you see the team in 12th place, Major League Soccer, it's a long season. And in my experience, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a team by its initial cover until you get to this time of year. When you get back into league play, and if it gets to late August, early September, that's when your team shows its true colors. And for Austin FC, there's a whole lot of firsts for this year, and it's been the growing pains. And I know that I've seen things about 2021. This feels like we've taken a step backwards. Let's be honest about the steps that we took forward last year. We were miracle workers. Sebastian Triusi, Diego Fagundes accounted for over 50% of our goals. It's almost like the sophomore slump that happens with players. And it's a testament to the collective effort of the group and the mentality of the veteran core that they're finding ways to win. It's the veteran players that I think are going to be the ones to get the team to move forward.
Yeah, I wish I could remember who this was that posted this, but it was during one of the several like ebbs and flows of the wolf out movement. Someone on Twitter posted a poll, and it was like, are you #wolf out, #wolf in, or #wolf in for now, or something along those lines. Like essentially the idea of the third choice was like, I'm kind of ambivalent. I think it's fine. I don't think he needs to be fired right now. And that choice won by a pretty wide margin. And so I think it is probably still the minority who are vehemently calling for his job at the moment, but it is a quite loud majority at the moment, or loud minority at the moment.
Yeah, no. And you see that throughout so many things. And I like to think that oftentimes, whether it's soccer or different things, it's usually the minority that bangs the drum the loudest, because let's look at the body of work. Josh Wolf was the head coach and still is the head coach, but was the head coach that did find a way to find Sebastian Triusi and put him in his best possible position in 2022. He was the head coach that got the best we've seen out of Diego Fagundes in probably the last 7-8 years, over the last 2 years. You still have to give credit to the head coach. Yes, players win and lose you games, but the coach has to put all the pieces together. And so far, what he's done last year and a bit of the miracle working that continues this year, you have to give him some level of credit because he is the man at the helm. And we can't just ignore the elephant in the room. Some of the off-field things that he's had to deal with, not a lot of coaches or any other coaches in the league have had to deal with to kickstart a season, especially as a young coach. So I'm very much Wolf in, not just because Austin FC is my employee, but I love this club. I'm a fan of this club. And in my experience, I think it's always a bit harsh when there's an emotional reaction. And look, we all care, but when there's emotional reaction, I liken it to a wave. The wave goes up, and then the wave dissipates once results come.
The second part of Robert Miller's question was, when Väisänen comes back, who would be your two center backs? And with Austin getting Hedges, where does that leave Ring? I know for me, I think if we had to choose right now at this very moment, and we're only playing two center backs, I think I would choose Väisänen and Hedges. But my real answer is, like, when we have all three of them healthy, you play whoever's rested at the moment, whoever's playing well. Like, that's what a healthy team does, right? It's like you have competition, whoever's in form gets the minutes. Do either of you have any like other opinions on that, or would you pick a different two if we're playing two center backs?
Yeah, Jeremiah, I'd love to hear your input before I go.
No, I would think. Those are my two for sure. But the way you phrased it, Landon, made me think maybe are you still toying with the idea that Josh goes back to three?
I mean, maybe
if you have Cascante, Hedges, and Väisänen available.
Yeah, I mean, because you have that option now. Like, you have three guys that you could put back there if you think either the personnel available on the other half of the field suits you best for it, what the other team is going to show you suits best for it. You have the option to do it. And the last several months have essentially been like, who is capable of playing center back? Okay, you're in.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think the one thing with Matt Hedges, and you've seen that with new players who have come in, unless your name is Sebastian Driussi, where you're so good, you're a DP, you walk into the lineup, and we've seen the benefit from day one, is Josh has always preached this patience process with new signings of, hey, they're going to have to get up speed. up to speed. They're going to have to learn the system. I think Matt, with all his experience, the one thing that I like about him, he's very adaptable. I played against him as a player. He's a leader. And Austin FC right now in the back line, Julio has stepped up significantly. But last year, what made Austin FC tick from back to front was having a veteran leader in your back line in the form of Ruben Gabrielson. Ruben's out this year. So if Matt Hedges wants to be that week in, week out starter for the remainder of the season, his leadership is what's going to be needed. In terms of ball playing, I give the edge to Leo because Leo's more comfortable. You see, with the Finnish national team, it's part of a bit of his repertoire. The one thing that I think will benefit this team in the long run, though, is getting a left-footed center back. So far, it's been all right-footed players, and I think teams start to scout that. And in games where they've succeeded, it's getting the ball to Julio and then finding Danny Pereira, and you break the press.
All right. Well, we were talking about our pretty much our only signing of this transfer window, Matt Hedges. Nicole Blair asked, do you expect any further news during this transfer window? So we're recording this the night of Monday, July 31st. Is it 2 more days? Do y'all remember?
Wednesday. Yeah, the second
Wednesday.
Day
Okay.
Closes. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're getting really close to the end. Are you guys expecting any other changes in the next day and a half?
I tell you what, I hope Anthony Precourt and the ownership are watching. There's a guy who's available on the market. His name is Mbappe. Get that guy, and Austin FC will win the MLS treble. No, realistically,
I thought you were about to announce yourself coming out of retirement.
Hey, I'm always available. Don't tell my wife. I'm always available, bro. No, I would be surprised if there are more reinforcements, but never doubt the ownership. Never doubt the staff, because now that there's a sporting director and Rodolfo in there, that I think there could be a wrinkle. But right now, what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing anything as of late. That's not official news or unofficial news. But I think getting Matt Hedges is more the urgency of putting more solidity in that back line because of injuries.
That's kind of what we expected whenever Burrell was hired, right, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I expect that he's not going to have time to really have an influence on this window. And you don't want to hamstring his ability to make changes, like long-term build changes during the offseason when they will have a lot more flexibility, by panicking and doing anything rash, during this window. So I could totally see a position where we kind of wait it out and see where we're at the end of the year, both in terms of the players and the coach, and then go from there.
The next question comes from Alex Mod. He says, once San Antonio FC is an accident, twice Violette is a coincidence, 3 times Chicago is a pattern, 4 times Mazatlan is a problem, and 5 times Juarez is a habit. Each of these games has specifics on why they win against Austin, but it has become a habit for the club not just to lose, but to put up substandard efforts in these external competitions. Like, what is the common thread between these games? Because they have been for different reasons. It's not the same thing every time. Michael, as a former player, what is the difference in this game and an MLS game? Like, what is the mentality as a player coming into these things, and what do you see is going wrong for Austin FC with that mentality aspect of it?
I think that, and you hit it on the head, of when you play cup competition, it's one game, you win or you go home. And you can tell very much by the teams who have their priorities in certain competitions versus the teams that are saying, hey, maybe we get something out of this. And I think, I'm not saying that the team is going into any game saying, oh, well, maybe we're not going to put as much effort. Very much the opposite. I think you see that through the course of 90 minutes. The effort is not lacking. I think the mentality shift is just, in my experience, teams that have things going on the MLS front tend to not do as well in the Open Cup, tend to not do as well because in certain cup competitions, and we'll put an asterisk with Violette because that was something that I think everyone can hold their hand up involved in that game. That is not representative of Austin FC. It's not representative of the fan base. It's not representative of the standard that this team has put up so far to be in a competition like that. But in terms of every other competition, I think it's hard as a player to know where to put your energy if you're starting to climb the table. And it's just the human psychology of being a player. I know the teams that I always had success with in things like the Open Cup, if you look at where we were in the standings, you didn't want to look because we were playing for our jobs. We were playing for our lives. That there was a sense of urgency put in by the staff, by the coach saying, hey, if you don't make a run in this cup, there will be changes. And there's nothing like pressure that'll get the most out of you. Look at Chicago. Since they won that game at Q2 Stadium, they've kind of found a bit more life, usually away from home, and getting some of their players kind of a bit more confident. And that can be the catalyst for teams not doing well in the league to start finding a bit of confidence. That win or go home, that one off, that's something that I think the San Antonio FC's, that's their World Cup final. And I think Austin FC coming off back-to-back away games, the DC win, you have the emotional highs, and then you have the emotional lows because it's so hard to get back up for maybe a team like that, which is in the USL. And the teams that have more standing in Major League Soccer and longer history, I'd say like your Seattle Sounders, which have done it on multiple fronts, your Portlands, which have done it on multiple fronts, maybe not last year, but there's something in the Pacific Northwest. I think they've figured it out of how to do enough to get results. It's not about the aesthetics. I think Austin FC will become a major player in all different competitions when it becomes down to sacrificing maybe the aesthetics to go for the pragmatism, to just do whatever it takes to get the results. And this year, injuries really haven't helped the cause. It's not an excuse. It's a reality.
You mentioned teams in the Pacific Northwest. Portland specifically is a team that does not mind playing against the ball, and for that reason have been really good in knockout competitions. So I think that is probably part of the difficulty, where Austin and Josh Wolf are pretty dedicated to their way of playing and don't really like to change it much. And so when going into this one game knockout, if a team goes super negative or if one play goes against you, you don't really have anything to fall back on. As far as the mental part of it, do you think there is like a responsibility for Josh Wolf and the coaching staff to motivate these players better for the games? Or do you think it's just like a freak thing that's happened 5 times in a row?
I think when it happens once, as you said, when it happens a few times, I think you start seeing a habit. And especially when it's happened with a core group that's been there, a predominant core group that's been there since day one. You know, there's been changes, but the majority of players that were there from 2000 or 2021, I want to say 2011, going back to when I played, but 2021 is the heart and the spine of the team. Yes, some attacking players have come and gone, but the majority of the players are still there. I think that that's still a soul-searching process for the club and for the staff and for the players. I'm one that I will always find it hard to put blame on coaches unless in terms of personnel, you just get it completely wrong. And look, coaches and players don't get results, and coaches and players do get results. But first and foremost, as a player, I always liked it better when you walked into a locker room after a result that didn't go your way, and the locker room and the players were the first ones to raise their hands and said, this is not good enough. And when I look throughout this team, I see a leader emerging in the form of Ethan Finley. Can't wait to talk about that guy's form, because what he's done on the field has been such a catalyst for this revival in Major League Soccer in terms of the season.
Well, this next question is from Elise. Maybe we'll just get into it here. This is about like with it up and down roller coaster of a season. What does that do to the mindset of the players? I think like Ethan Finley's comment when he was asked about scoring the goal in the loss of Juarez is like really, illustrative of that. It's like, how do you handle this like up and down year and sort of like getting back in the saddle and being ready?
I loved that Ethan Finley said that. That's brutal honesty. That shows me that that's a guy who's locked in. That's a guy who's not satisfied with losing to Juarez. And Juarez this year, I mean, what they've done in Liga MX has been impressive. Club America, Tigres, CONCACAF Champions League winners multiple times. They have Gignac. So they're no slouches themselves. They have a baller in Aitor Garcia, but it's always disappointing when you lose kind of handedly, and you were winning 1-0. It's not the first time we've seen Austin FC up a goal and dropping points at home. And I like it when I see frustration from players, especially veteran players. And I think that's someone who I would like Josh Wolf and his staff to really elevate more in a leadership position, to have him be one of the vocal leaders, emotional leaders, because it shows in his form and it's contagious. We see that with Sebastian last year. There's a reason why he's captain. When things are hard, Sebastian was there for the rescue, just leading by example. Ethan's now doing that. Brad has done that in different times. Didn't have his best game, and he's the first one to admit it against Juarez, but we know what we can expect from Brad. At the end of the day, though, it's what you do on the field. We'll find out a lot about the run-in from this group when St. Louis is the next game on the docket at the end of the month.
All right. Well, this next, how are you doing on time here? Oh yeah, we should maybe move through these next ones a little quicker, Jeremiah. Okay. Next one is from Kerr and Kelly. And they ask, would you trade Ring for another DP in the league, or trade Ring for a lesser player plus some GAM in order to let Burrell have some more money to spend in the offseason? So Jeremiah, what are you taking out of those two options?
Oh, I would think So we're assuming we have to let Ring go. Sorry.
That's the only option at the moment.
If I get rid of Ring, I'm replacing him completely with another designated player, because that's where teams can differentiate, is when their designated players performing.
Yeah. Go on.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think at this point, this late in the transfer window, it's probably unlikely to see him go. And we've talked a little bit about all the weird stuff with losing the captaincy at the beginning of the season, having to play center back, that maybe he wanted to leave. At this point, it seems unlikely. We're thinking that he is probably at the end of at least his guaranteed contract at the end of this year. Mike, do you think there's any possibility that he still goes? And then if Austin were to try to cash in on him, which of those two routes would you want to see them go?
I think whenever you have a designated player, if you're going to get rid or trade or try and cash in on them, you do it at the start of the window. That tells me that there's a strategy behind it. It's not just a reaction. And it tells me there's a unified front that's strategizing in congruence and in accordance with the sporting director. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, because you now have center backs that can play center backs. Alex Ring has played out of position. He's also recently dealt with injury woes throughout this season. He's getting a bit older, but in the run-in, you never know when you're going to have to rely on Alex Ring. That's a ton of experience that you'd be cashing and throwing out the window just for a gamble. I think that's too big of a gamble. The team is in 5th place, and I think you will need Alex Ring. Now, he's going to get more informed. Hopefully he gets more reps. Hopefully he gets more games with the run-in, and games coming fast, thick, and thin. So I would keep Alex Ring and hope you get some big games, because say Austin FC do get in the playoffs. I think they will make the playoffs. You never know. Look at Johan Valencia starting games last year in the playoffs. Look at Moussa Gite. You never know when you're going to have to rely on certain players. Moussa Gite started the Western Conference Finals. This time last year, we weren't talking about Moussa or thinking Moussa would be a starter. Johan Valencia maybe played a handful of games. He contributed in the playoffs. He contributed at the very end of the season. Form ebbs and flows, and it's never the same group of players that start the season. Very rarely, I should say. It's never the same group that starts the season that ends it in big games.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it reminds me, I skipped over this part of Robert Miller's question earlier, but he said, with Hedges coming into the team, where does that leave Alex Ring? And my answer is hopefully in the midfield, right? Now that we do have cover at the back, he was only back there because he had to be. And so now that he's available to not be at center back, we've seen Owen Wolf's form dip a little bit over the last month or two. To have an option like Alex Ring to put back into the midfield to play as that 10 box 8 kind of player, that's a huge asset to have. And so I could see an argument for if he's not in the plans for the future, he's going to walk away for free at the end of the season. I see the argument for cashing in on him, but I see probably a stronger argument for keeping him at this point. If Austin really is going to try to get a home game in the playoffs, make a run in the playoffs, Alex Ring could be a big part of that, just like you said.
Yeah, and I look at, when you get to playoff games, look at last year, what mattered most. Set pieces are the defining things. They're the thing that separate teams in the early rounds. They tend to separate teams as the pressure cooks up. Alex Ring, one of his strengths, taking and scoring set piece headed goals. In his tenure with Austin FC, he's one of the leaders. I think he's behind Julio Cascante in headed goals off set pieces with this current roster. That could be something that you'd be ruining if you cash in on a player like him right now, unless you can get some high value player, which I don't think teams are going to make that move. I think it's a big gamble of Austin FC do it. I don't see it happening. And I think we'll be looking back thinking, okay, that was a wise move to keep Alex Ring for his experience.
Well, our next question, this is something I wonder about too, and this you'll have the perspective on. So from Taylor Kopic, how does this string of injuries, this says rank among the worst of recent history, but like, you know, I'm an Austin FC fan. I did not follow the league until we got a team here. It's like, I don't have a lot of perspective on, I feel like 2022 Austin was very healthy overall, but like, is this a normal year? Is this an aberration? Is this somewhere in between? Like, how does sort of this injury run for Austin fit in terms of like what you can expect from regular MLS season?
I think this is the byproduct of it's year two was getting in the playoffs, and there is newness about it. And to your point, I think one of the things that we benefited from, and you see it throughout Major League Soccer and the teams that have success, is consistency in the lineup, is keeping players healthy. You get to build bonds, you get to build confidence. And this year, I think the injury plague has come from the fact that it's the first season where we've had to start earlier. We've had to prepare for a competition in the CONCACAF Champions League and a maiden voyage that didn't go our way. So now you're dealing with the emotional stress of that. The fan base isn't happy with that. The players have to deal with pressure that they've never faced before. And you start and stutter, inconsistency in the league, added pressure. And I can't just emphasize enough how there's a book that I remember reading called The Body Keeps a Score. And I wish I had read it earlier in my career. And it talks about how stress, your body, it stays within your body, within kind of the marrow, the bone marrow of your tissues and your fibers, and it breaks you down. So I think that the early start, the turnaround from an emotional season 2 in 2022, the letdown of being 90 minutes away from MLS Cup with Austin FC, going to LAFC and losing to the eventual champions and the better team on the day. But that wears on you to then turn around. I think that's what we've seen with the injury woes and the injury problems. So if you put that all together, the newness, we're still in year 3. It shows how much we've increased expectation from 2021 to get to this year. Like I said, I expect this team, I believe in this team, given what they've done to turn things around. I think the biggest focal point is now just keeping everyone healthy. They've shown that when their backs are up against the wall, they've shown it a couple of times that they have enough resolve to get through the slump of the the slump of the late spring months to then turn it around the summer months. The last 2.5 months of the season, that's where winning teams are made and winning teams are found, or losing teams are found out. So for Austin FC, it's about getting everyone healthy, seeing Danny Pereira back in the lineup, seeing Sebastian Driussi back in the lineup. That gives me instant confidence to see their instant impact on a team that looked more dynamic. I mean, they had 8 shots on target in the first half against the third or fourth best team in Liga MX right now, and a team that ended up winning, deservedly so. 3-1 on the night, or was it 4-1? I forgot. I think I closed my eyes after a few of the goals went in.
That's fair.
But that tells me that first half, if those players are sharper, if they're fitter, if they can maintain that and spread that to be more consistency and healthier, that gives me more confidence. And maybe I'm just an optimist and just, like I said, I showed you guys, maybe there's something not like water in this thing. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there is. Maybe that's for after hours. But I still take a lot of positives from that first half. Now it's about getting players healthy and making that a 90-minute affair. If you can make that 90-minute affair, then maybe the scoreline's reversed, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. They didn't do it on the night. Hopefully they get it done against St. Louis.
Yeah, that's a good point of you only have to be good in MLS for a little stretch of time. So if we can get some guys coming back from injury at the right moment and playing together, I think that could be really big for this team. Next question comes from Alex Rubio. He says, if you were Rodolfo Borrell, besides center back, which maybe arguably we don't need to strengthen at center back now, but where would you strengthen the team and why? I think there's probably a few spots you can name. I would say, especially if Alex Ring doesn't stick around after this season, I would say a box-to-box midfielder. I could also argue, maybe this is weird to say, but at fullback, I feel like we could be better at fullback. Do either of you have any other positions where you think they should definitely focus on strengthening?
Jeremiah, I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say.
I mean, we just said a lot of good things about Ethan Finley, but he's also like not a young guy and getting older. Like I still feel like there's help on the wing, and especially with how without Emiliano Rigoni is not developed. I mean, obviously the best help would be for Emiliano Rigoni to like turn into the player that he's like the DP that he's being compensated before, but like I'm sort of losing hope on that. So I would say like the wing is another spot where Austin needs some help.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think down the flanks, you see the impact when John Gallagher is not in, and John Gallagher has been the revelation of this season, MLS All-Star, rightfully so. Congrats to him. But you see the impact, the loss of dynamic movement that happens up one side of the flank, and the lack of depth in wide play and wingers. The emergence of Ethan Finley, re-emergence of Ethan Finley, putting his summer form matching, I think almost exceeding his summer form from last year, where he kicked on from the Colorado game and really became a factor, working himself in until the arrival of Emi Rigoni. I think getting goal-scoring wingers, that is something that you need to take the goal-scoring pressure off of Sebastian Driussi. Sebastian Driussi, 6 goals, 3 assists by his standards. That is not the Sebastian that we saw last year. It's amazing because if you were to ask a team like Chicago, if you were to ask some of the other teams languishing in Major League Soccer, they'd be like, oh my gosh, our DP is getting that? All right, we'll take that. But it's Driussi. It's because he can do what he can do, and he's a double-digit goal scorer. Fagundes not having the year he had last year. So getting a goal-scoring winger for Austin FC that can complement Ethan Finley, that can give flexibility if now we've seen Diego fill in for Sebastian at the number 10 position. I think that would bode well for the team, give more balance, helps you rotate a bit more with Ethan getting older. And I like I said, I'll repeat myself in saying down the back, the injuries to the likes of a Jean Komenich, I think Adam Lundqvist kind of losing form a bit. I go back to that Minnesota United game. He was doing well. The game against Seattle, some of the home games, I think the Colorado game where he got the assist, he was finding confidence. But when you're a newer player to a team, all it takes is one moment because of the newness of a team, the newness of getting used to playing for a different fan base. All it takes is one moment to kind of erode your confidence. And I think we've kind of seen a bit of an erosion from his confidence. But in the same breath, all it takes is one quality game against a good opponent to bring that confidence back.
Next question comes from Marcelo Tesson, and he says, who are your picks for the first Efecito player without a first team contract to get one in the coming years?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I can tell you who I'm really glad to see that's gotten first team minutes. I've been a big fan of Valentin Noel. I think that's a player who I'd like to see continue get first team minutes, especially once MLS play gets back. I think he's a player that you can get his feet wet in road games, continue to get him in the rotation. He can play anywhere along the front line. He can play as the false 9, although I like him in that wide position, kind of can play in the pocket, which very much in the Josh Wolf form. A player that I'm surprised didn't get right in the mix, David Rodriguez. I thought he's one of the best players in preseason. I think that those two should get more minutes, and I hope they do, because that'll connect the pipeline from first team to second team and hopefully create more doors and openings for some of the academy players.
Yeah, the complicated thing with those guys is because they're not on first team contracts, there's a cap to how much they can actually play in games, which is really frustrating to say that pretty much all of the second team players who are like might be ready for first team minutes are the ones who we aren't allowed to play in that many first team games. Jeremiah, who would your pick be?
Oh, I don't have anything to add beyond that. Leave it. Do you have somebody?
I'll say like, so like I think I've said this on the show before, that people kind of get fixated with the age of our first team players, and like they think as soon as someone turns 30 that they're worthless and they shouldn't be signed anymore. I think that gets overplayed. Where I think age does matter more is with these second team guys. And so a guy like Valentin Noel, as good as he's been, he's like 23, 24 years old. And so he is more or less the player he's going to be. And so my hopes are more with these younger guys, Micah Burton, Brian Arellano, and even more so with Irvin Torres, a kid 15 years old playing professional minutes right now and looking like he fits in. And so those are the guys I'm really excited about. And then I think honorable mention would be a guy like Steve Louis-Jean, a young Haitian kid. I think he's 18. And just like, I think those young guys, like that is going to be where the proof of concept of this academy system comes through. If we can start promoting guys like that into the first team.
Yeah, and my dream of having Saul Montefiore be that guy is over now that there are no players left, which I think is the only way that he was ever going to get any moment with that. Another question from Nicole Blair. which is, in my opinion, Ring's been the most valuable designated player this season, a solid center back replacement. We talked a little bit about Rigoni, and Driussi appears absent or frustrated on the field to me. Our best stretch was when he was injured. So I would like to, what do you read into that? I've seen a lot of this online commentary, Michael, about like Driussi not seeming like up for the captain's band or seeming frustrated or like not living up to expectations. I'm interested in your like reaction to those thoughts.
I think the weight of expectation, doesn't matter who he is, it's going to affect any player. It's very different when you're Sebastian Driussi of 2022 and you can just go and play. But we're seeing a Sebastian Driussi that isn't just going and playing, but he is the one that everyone's still looking to, and with greater expectation and greater weight because he's got the captaincy on his arm. And that'll affect anyone. I know the teams that I've captained in my career, there was a bit of a transition process, and it would sometimes take me half a season to just say, okay, you're the captain and you don't have to change how you play. It just means that there's a leadership element, there's a sign of respect, and there's trust and responsibility that's placed in your arm. You are not the only one. And I think that, I hope at least, that's with this break coming and with games coming and beyond this year, I hope we see a more settled Sebastian Driussi. I think that the injuries, that's a player who hasn't really had to deal with injuries from 2021 and last year. His consistency, his health was much to our benefit. He's a player that gets kicked a lot and fouled a lot. I think whenever you get an MVP caliber season, which I still, yes, Hani Mukhtar won, but I still don't know how you can't reward a guy who did it from day one in the season and not give him MVP. I know goals count for something in Major League Soccer. I've seen it with previous winners who turned it out at the right moment. That is my soapbox protest against the MVP from last year, and I'll stop right there. But it's so hard to, when everyone, I mean, there's a target on your back. Teams have had a season of adjusting for Driussi. I think the change in tactics this year, I think Driussi is not just playing as a midfielder, he's playing as an out-and-out attacking midfielder. We switched from a back three to a back four, and that affects where you get the ball. I think this season, I've seen Sebastian Driussi in the first half of the season picking up the ball deeper. Now, when he's been scoring goals, whenever you pick up the ball deeper, you're not getting in the box as much because there's work you have to do on both sides of the ball. Sebastian Driussi at his best is maybe dropping deep to get a touch or two, but arriving in the box. When he scored goals, you look at the Minnesota United game, it's letting the Danny Pereiras, it's letting the other players around him, Diego Fagundes is getting back to form. That's a domino effect that impacts Sebastian's play. Diego not being in sync and in concert as much as he was this year, I think that's what's impacted Sebastian and some of the other players around him, taking a while to get back.
And then the second half of that question was essentially saying, like, if Ring does leave, what characteristics would you want to see in a new DP, or like what kind of personality or position would you want to see? And I personally, if Alex Ring does stick around, I would like for it to be in a non-designated player role, just because of primarily his age, 32 now. So I think that combined with his kind of performance over the last couple of years, I think we could probably get more out of a DP spot. And if he sticks around, I would like for it to be in that TAM era, like TAM zone. As far as what I'd like to see, I mean, I would like to essentially replace Alex Ring, whether he's here or not, and get one of those, like an 8 for lack of a better word, but like a guy who's can contribute to the attack enough to be creative going forward, contribute defensively, and kind of be that real box to box midfielder. And I think of guys like some of the guys on Kansas City's team, guys like Houston's midfield has some guys like this, where just these real game changers in the middle of the park there. And I feel like Austin has several players who are really gifted in certain areas, but not as much in other. And it just feels a little bit out of balance sometimes. So that would be my pick as far as, like, if specifically for a Ring replacement, I would legitimately straight up replace Ring.
Yeah, I look at there's different mechanisms that you can go down, and that's why I think TAM is there to buy down players, to get them to fit within the box and the metrics, so you can keep them if you decide to. But if you are to get rid of Alex Ring, I agree with you that you got to go younger, and it also depends on what sort of formation Josh Wolf wants to play. We've seen that pairing between Owen Wolf and Danny Pereira going with the youth movement, that takes time. there's going to be some growing pains. There have been growing pains. Both players are internationals right now. And there's been talk of Owen Wolff potentially making a move to Europe. That may happen at the end of the season. It may happen at some point next year. It may happen down the road. So what if Owen Wolff, and question for you guys, if Owen Wolff were to get picked up by a club from Europe, do you still pass on Alex Ring? Do you still cash in on him? Or are you now forced to keep him?
I mean, you have to replace him. Like, so, and I, if I'm not mistaken, I think his contract situation would be like an option year this offseason. And so what I would like to do, this is almost certainly not what Alex Ring wants to do. I would want to not pick up his option and negotiate a new contract for a lower number, open up some more cap space, bring in that game changer, which Owen Wolff is young, promising, but he's not that guy now. And so I would welcome that, like, sell Owen for some money, use that money plus some extra Ring cap space to bring in a game changer in that spot. Not somebody who's going to be good in 2 years, but somebody who's great now.
Oh,
all right. Well, let's.
Yeah, Jeremiah.
I've got like two dumb questions that we have at the end that I've been waiting to ask you the whole time. So like I'm excited about this part of the interview. This comes from our favorite ATX Bergkamp lover 6969420, who's also got the best username, and this is going to be for you, Michael, because like people here, our talents are like there all the time. What hidden talent do you have, and do you want to display it on video right now?
I can't display it because I don't have the equipment that I used to have, but I used to write and produce music.
No way.
So, yeah, I can do that. And
what kind of music?
Anything from R&B to acoustics. So my background in school was in math, and just kind of through my college roommate, Marcus Tracy, who he was a gifted athlete, Herman Trophy Award winner, played in Denmark. One of our bonds was through music, and he had me sit down and just kind of listen to songs and put words and lyrics to them. And so at the start of our careers, for the first 4 years, we would make music together. And there are actually some songs out there on the interweb. I don't know if you want to listen to them, but making music would be one of them.
I have some of those too. People ask where they can listen to my music. I'm like, I'm not telling you that.
Yeah, no.
I'll tell you where some of it is, but I'm not telling you where all of it is. Yeah. One of the other questions from ATX Bergkamp Lover 6969420 is, which non-MLS teams do you hate the most and why?
And I feel like you should have personal experience, right? Like you've got somebody that did you wrong.
Well, I think my disdain for certain teams are because of certain players who shall remain anonymous, maybe for the After Dark Pod. You just have certain, just have people that you have run-ins with that you're like, gosh, I can't stand this guy on the field. From my time I go by just rivalries. I'm a big rivalry guy. That just stays with you, and you don't realize how much that's embedded in your blood until you retire, and you're like, I still don't like those guys. But I go back to the Chivas days, man. I still have a grudge against the LA Galaxy. I hate to say it, but those were our rivals, and they're easy to hate. They were FC Hollywood at the time. David Beckham, Landon, Donovan, Robbie Keane. It just went on. They got Zlatan after that. So I would say LA Galaxy. That is a team that I still am like, oh. And then from my time with the Philadelphia Union, those pesky New York Red Bulls, or Red Bull New York, whichever way you want to say it, man. It felt like it felt like that Red Bull money always got you. They were doing what Inter Miami is doing now. We're acting like it's the first time we've seen, oh my gosh, not to the caliber of Messi, but oh my gosh, they're getting DP caliber players. Red Bull were doing that back in 2010. Rafa Marquez, Thierry Henry, Tim, like, are you serious right now? At the time, that was what I was saying, player for Union. Like, are you serious right now? We used to beat these guys. Now, overnight, they are perennial supporter shields winners because they have one of the best strikers and best attackers.
Now I have to mark Thierry Henry.
Yeah. Wait, bring the other guy back they had before that was about to retire. I like him better. So those are some teams. I'd say I can't think of any teams.
You're talking about the Galaxy. Like I've always, my first soccer love was Barca, and I'm not really a Barca fan now, but still hate Real Madrid. And I've always been like kind of the underdog fan, and so I've never been able to like Real Madrid or like PSG, like the team that's just always going to spend a ton of money. And that like Barca kind of became that more, and which is why I won't call myself a fan of them anymore. But yeah, talking about like LA Galaxy, like I was never able to like cheer for the Galaxy at all.
Yeah, no, one of the hardest pills to swallow was, you get traded, and as soon as I got traded, they went on their runs of MLS Cups. And so MLS Cup was just a foregone conclusion that most likely it was going to be held in LA at the Galaxy's home turf. So you're there, you get invited to go do a league appearance, and now you're standing in front of people that, would boo you as a player, and they still booed you for the appearance. So just as you don't forget, fans don't forget either.
All right. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up now. Michael Lahoud, thanks so much for joining us. Let our listeners know where they can find you. Anything else you want to promote, go for it.
Yeah, you can continue to tune in. If you haven't, tune in to Verde Lights. It airs every game day just before kickoff. It's kind of become our new pregame show with Adrian Healey and I. You can find it on KXAN or the CW locally in Austin. Yes, linear TV still has a place in this world, forever linear. And if not Austin, you can find me on two things. I'll be doing college soccer with ESPN this year, both UT women's soccer on LHN network. I think it's the last year for that. So
So, yeah.
And you can also find me doing more college soccer ACC network, going back to where it all started for me. Went to Wake Forest, so go Deeks as well. And last but not least, I'll be continuing to do some more work with CBS Sports. Really excited to grow that relationship. Morning footy, box to box, and there's going to be some interesting new announcements coming around the corner. Can't tell you about them yet, but keep your eyes peeled. And also follow me on social media, on Twitter at Mike Lahoud, on Instagram at Mike Lahoud, and on anything else you can think of, probably at Mike Lahoud.
All right. Well, we'll be looking forward to those announcements. We'll be looking forward to following you and seeing the rest of your work. But yeah, thanks so much for joining this. This was a blast, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank you both. Always available to do it. Both of you are awesome.
Thanks, Michael.
All right.